The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Man, screw the playoffs. That's how I got it. I didn't know how to start this one. The free agency madness continues here on Fantasy NBA Today. Dan Besbris, Adrian Benjamins on your Tuesday morning edition of the pod. A hoop ball presentation at Dan Besbris, at Adrian Benjamins on Twitter. And the news just the hits keep on coming, as they say. Tuesday morning means we can bring you all of the updates from about 9:30 yesterday until first thing this morning. And one of them, of course, is one that we're going to be yelling about for a bit. But first, Adrian, how are the last 2 days treating you? I am like, I don't know. I love this rabbit hole. Even when it makes me angry, I love it.
Dan, I'm just in shock right now. I don't even know how to process all this. I'm numb. I'm upset. I'm excited. I'm just on overload right now, Dan. This is craziness.
And there was a summer league game on top of all of that stuff. Not that I give a flying hoot. You guys know about me that I don't care about rookies. Generally, those are rookies playing in games that don't really matter. So everybody goes big. So I don't really care, but it is kind of cool that there are games happening, and that's just kind of the icing on the cake. Let me quickly go through. Here's what we're going to do, by the way. If you caught yesterday's show, you probably know what's about to happen. I'm going to read the list of every single free agent that's been signed during this free agency period so far, or at least has agreed to a deal. I get it. The name on the dotted line doesn't happen for a couple more days. If you listened to yesterday's show, you can ignore the first 29 names that I'm going to say, but there were an additional 10 players that signed on Monday, many of whom signed for interesting deals, so I'll cough or something to wake you up after the first chunk. Lightning round for the first ones. Rudy Gay back to the Spurs. Kevin Durant, 2 years to the Warriors. Joe Harris, 2 years to the Nets. DeAndre Jordan, a year with the Mavs. Aaron Baines, 2 years with the Celtics. Jeremy Grant, 3 years with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Will Barton, 4 years to the Nuggets. Paul George, 4 years to the Thunder. LeBron, 4 years to the Los Angeles Lakers. Chris Paul, 4 years back in Houston. Doug McDermott, 3 years in Indiana. Trevor Ariza, a year with the Suns. Ed Davis to the Brooklyn Nets for a year. Gerald Green, the veteran's minimum. He's back with the Rockets. Ersan Ilyasova, 3 years to the Bucks. Marco Bellinelli, 2 to the Spurs. Omri Caspi, a 1-year deal with the Memphis Grizzlies. Derrick Rose, he's with the Wolves. Freddie Van Fleet back with the Raptors for 2 years. Lance Stevenson to the Lakers for a year. Derrick Jones Jr. signing with the Heat for 2 years. Glenn Robinson III, 2 years with the Pistons. Salam Ejri back with the Mavericks, as I said yesterday, but who's counting? Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a year with the Lakers. Mario Hezonja, a year with the Knicks. And JaVale McGee, a year with the Lakers. That was Sunday, by the way. That was it. That's all you had on Sunday. And then yesterday, the names you can add to this list, and I'll read these a tiny bit slower. J.J. Redick back with the Philadelphia 76ers. He signed a 1-year deal for about $12 million. Mike Scott signed a short-term contract with the Clippers. Avery Bradley also joining the Clippers, or rejoining the Clippers, I should say, for 2 years at $25 million. They're giving him another shot, hoping that he can stay healthy. Julius Randle, after being renounced by the Lakers, signed for 2 years with the New Orleans Pelicans for $18 million. I have thoughts on the Lakers' relationship with Julius Randle's agent, Aaron Mintz, coming up later on in the show. Seth Curry to the Blazers for 2 years. I really like that deal. Rajon Rondo, a 1-year deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. Jose Calderon, veterans minimum with the Detroit Pistons. Nerlens Noel picked the Thunder for 2 years, and Derek Favors returns to the Jazz for 1 with a player option on 2, or team option on 2, I think. Okay, 38 players have been signed in free agency so far as I can tell. Adrian, where are we going first? Because a lot of these things are big stories.
Let's start. We got to start with Boogie Cousins.
Do we? Do we have to? All right, we can. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, no, let's do it. Let's do it.
I do also want to touch on Randall and Avery Bradley. A lot of interesting guys that you just mentioned, but this Boogie Cousins one, for me, was a roller coaster because I really hated how easy it felt the Warriors won this past title. I hated it. Now, when I found out they were adding Boogie Cousins Dan, I was so angry. I was like, how is this possible? But I found out, so Boogie Cousins has said that he did not get a single offer in free agency.
I don't buy it.
Is that how is that possible, right?
I don't buy it.
So word is that when he did not get a single offer, he picked up the phone, he called the Warriors. So I kind of now feel a little differently. Like if he did not get, I mean, this guy needs to play in the NBA, right? And from his viewpoint, the Warriors make a lot of sense, right? He can win a ring. He can kind of come back slowly from his Achilles injury. He doesn't need to be leaned on really heavily because, oh my gosh, they got 4 other guys that can handle the scoring load. So he can come back at his own pace from the injury. So if it's true that he did not get an offer, it makes sense to me now. So I'm kind of not as angry about this. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, that's baloney. Whatever story he's putting out there is complete and total fabrication. In fact, while you were talking, Adrian, I always try to have one eye on Twitter just in case something breaks. Will Guillory, the beat writer for the Pels, for NOLA.com and the Times down in New Orleans, sent out a tweet that said, and I'll read it verbatim here. Let me clarify. DeMarcus Cousins and the Pelicans never had a formal meeting, so there may not have been an official offer on the table, but numbers were discussed, and there was an understanding of what each side was looking for. To say the Pels didn't want Boogie is not true. So we're basically, his story's being refuted, basically as we're doing this podcast, to say, yeah, the Pels were talking numbers with Boogie, and he just got impatient and decided to call the Warriors. So to say that no one wanted him or there were no offers on the table, it's garbage, and I think you're going to start seeing today that teams come out with their version of this, which is like, yeah, okay, we never like slid him a crumpled up piece of paper with a number on it across a desk, but we had been talking to his agent and saying we want him. We just were working on trying to figure out a number. This is ring chasing in the hardest possible sense. A guy who knows he's going to be at less than full strength, who's not going to play the entire season, is latching on in a spot where he can just pop up in March, get his legs underneath him, and then play okay in April, May, and June, and potentially get himself a ring. And honestly, I don't like it. You know, this is the kind of thing where we've sort of come to accept it from guys at the end of their NBA careers, but Boogie's not that old yet. And I know there's this big injury thing, and he's thinking maybe I'll never be able to go get a ring later in my career, but you got to be damn sure, I'm damn sure at least, that this is a dude who is kind of exploiting whatever you want to call the salary cap these days to get a ring, to try to prove to other teams that he's going to be healthy come next year, and then he'll cash in a crazy way. I detest it. I detest it with every fiber of my being. Luckily, as fantasy people, we sort of don't care because this is a signing that mostly impacts the playoffs because he's not going to be healthy until, my guess would be March at the earliest, because guys just don't come back from this injury and play like they used to. Adrian, I was talking to my wife yesterday, who doesn't really pay attention to basketball, so I had to say it twice. But the gist of it was, I was a little bit upset when Kevin Durant went to the Warriors because I felt like it was kind of knocking around the competitive balance. And I know that the idea of parity in the NBA is sort of overblown, but I felt like it made one team that was a title contender not a title contender anymore, and it made a team that was already in the finals a much better bet to win the finals. But that was a fluke. The salary cap jumped at the very same moment that he became a free agent, and the Warriors happened to have all their regular guys on short or cheap contracts, and it was this magical, like, one time in 50 years type occurrence, and the Warriors got really lucky and exploited it. This, to me, is different. There was no exploitation of a salary cap jump. This is just a dude who should have made more money somewhere else at a young age saying, screw it, I'm just going to hop on a team that already won a title. And it sucks. It sucks for the NBA, and you can see it on Twitter. You can see it in the fans' reaction to it. Nobody likes this move. I don't even know if Warriors fans like this move because they just won. They don't feel like they need another all-star on their team.
Dan, I agree with you when you mentioned Kevin Durant. I felt like, I just hated to see a team, as you mentioned, who was already in the finals get arguably the best player in the NBA. And I have that feeling again with Boogie Cousins joining the team. Yes, he's not 100%, but man, he's just they have an all-star at every single position now. And Dan, it just feels wrong. It just I just hate it. And I kind of bought into the idea that maybe he didn't get an offer because there was a report coming from Woj that a lot of teams, they didn't want to go after Boogie because they were kind of scared about his attitude in the locker room. I believe there were teams, coming off of an Achilles injury. There were teams that didn't want to throw big money at him. So I was kind of buying into the idea that maybe he didn't really get a legitimate offer. So I don't know, Dan. I don't know, Dan. I'm just kind of torn on the whole thing. And it just sucks to see the rich getting richer. And I just hate this.
Yeah, well said. Well said. That is what it comes down to. Nobody wants to see the rich get richer. It happens, obviously. Teams, it's the concept of a super team. But this is a Warriors team that was already in the finals that has now added first Kevin Durant and then Boogie Cousins, and that's just crazy. And I also saw a note that passed through yesterday that said the Warriors' starting lineup in the postseason this coming year is probably going to be better than the Eastern Conference All-Star team. Like that's absurd. That shouldn't be a thing. Now, what it does do is, and I don't know if this is going to be a segue. I'm sure you have thoughts on what's going on in Los Angeles, but what it does do to a lot of teams in the Western Conference, at the very least, is kind of turn this coming season into batting practice, where they're just going to be, taking shots from their pitching coach or taking shots off a tee or whatever you want to use the metaphor in basketball, because they know they're not going to get by the Warriors. And so, for a team like the Lakers, who just brought in a whole bunch of one-year guys, bunch of weirdos, but one-year guys anyway, and LeBron kind of saying, hey, this is a long-term play, that actually makes a lot of sense. The Boogie Cousins thing, to me, the only team that really impacts is the Houston Rockets. Like, who else really cares? Who really thought they were going to get by the Warriors this year besides the Houston Rockets?
Yeah, no. Well, what's really interesting is that the Warriors have secretly been a big winner from this free agency, not so much because of the DeMarcus Cousins addition, but the Rockets lost Trevor Ariza, elite defender, just an amazing role player for that Rockets team. And it feels like a lot of teams in the West have kind of lost some value, where the Warriors are right there. The Warriors lose JaVale McGee, but now they add DeMarcus Cousins. So it's just, and I don't know, Dan. It's just so crazy. And then one interesting thing, do you want to talk about Julius Randle? Because
I do.
The Pelicans losing DeMarcus Cousins, that's a big loss for them. Although we did kind of see the Pelicans play a little bit better when Cousins went down with that injury. Anthony Davis became that main cog in the middle, and the ball kind of seemed to move a little bit better. There was a little more space, and I really like this addition of Julius Randle to this Pelicans team. I kind of foresee him being a nice fit next to Anthony Davis. What do you think about this, Dan?
Well, I do think it's a little bit of a thorn in the side on my guy Nico. That was the first thought I had when I saw that signing. All right, crap. This is Julius Randle's a front court guy, and Nico's a front court guy. I think there's going to be enough time for all three of them, provided Anthony Davis. He'll be the big minutes guy, obviously, in that New Orleans front court. He'll play his 35, 36 minutes or whatever it is. That, of course, still leaves 12 bench minutes at center or power forward or whatever you want to talk about, and then 48 minutes at the other front court slot. So that still leaves you 60 more front court minutes that you can split basically between Julius Randle and Nico Mirotic, because I don't think anybody else is going to be seeing much time on that club. So I think they'll both still be okay, but it does kind of cap Nico a little bit. He's got the outside shot. That gives him a little bit of an edge. Julius Randle, kind of the bull in the china shop style. But there'll be a room for both of them. That's more the fantasy side of things. My beef on the Julius Randle side is not actually with Randle himself, but with his agency. This CAA, and Aaron Mintz is the guy who is Julius's agent, who also happens to be the agent for D'Angelo Russell and Paul George. And basically, this was an agent that kind of froze out the Lakers, I assume because of how the D'Angelo Russell situation played out. I feel like this was just punishment for the Lakers, treating him poorly, they believed, or he believed, and then jettisoning him off to Brooklyn for nothing. But I don't know. To me, that's like you're a bad agent if that's what you're doing. If you're taking one of the biggest franchises in the NBA off of your list just because you got beef, then I don't feel like he's doing his guy a service. And perhaps there was more going on, and maybe I'm simplifying things too much. But don't you want to get the Lakers bidding for your services rather than just kind of make a point? To me, that's stupid. And plus, I'm seeing a lot of reports coming out that Paul George seemed to relinquish a tiny bit of his control over the future of hit. Not that $170 million isn't enough for a dude, but apparently there was another way he could have structured his contract that would have given him more flexibility after 2 years to get actually a raise and extend his contract and get him more security. So obviously he's getting his guys plenty of money, but I don't know. It seems to me like Aaron Mintz is working sort of the wrong angle on this thing, and yeah, it hurts the Lakers because they didn't get a meeting with Paul George, and they weren't able to bring back Julius Randle. But if these guys could have made more money, they should be annoyed with their guy. To me, that's the bottom line, and I think it's stupid.
Yeah, it was really strange that Paul George did not even meet with the Los Angeles Lakers, a team that he said numerous times was his intent to join the Lakers. So it was really strange that he didn't even meet with the Lakers. So I think you got a really good point here that there's just some strange stuff going on. As a Laker fan, I'm really torn to lose a guy like Julius Randle. It's the guy that we got to see come into the league. We saw him improve. We saw him work hard. So it's really tough for me to see him go. But, we also got a lot of talent in the front court right now. Kyle Kuzma, of course, we added LeBron James. Brandon Ingram is big enough to play, maybe some three could, if they go small lineup, maybe he can even play four. So we got enough talent in that front court that I don't think we'll miss Randle too much. But, I just kind of got attached to him a little bit, I guess. So it's a little tough to see him go, but I do like the move for him. I think he's going to be great. I think they'll still, as you mentioned, there'll still be enough minutes and enough usage for him to play with Nico. And I just really think he'll be a good fit with Anthony Davis. And they got him at a good price.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah, the price was excellent. 2 years, $18 million. That's nothing for a guy that by the end of last year was playing as good a basketball as Julius Randle was. I mean, that's a steal. That's an absolute steal. You're 100% right on that one. What do you think about the Warriors now? Do you make any adjustments to your fantasy power rankings based on the signing of Boogie, or is the expectation that he's going to be out for long enough where it's not going to be that massive of an impact? For me, I think there has to be at least some adjustment.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I do believe, Boogie, as you mentioned, Boogie's not going to be ready for the start of the season. So, I think Durant, Curry, Draymond Green, Clay, we're still going to be valuing these guys pretty similar. I don't think we're going to change that much. And then one guy that I've actually keeping an eye on in deep leagues is Jordan Bell. I think Jordan Bell could put up some okay value in deeper leagues with JaVale McGee gone and with Boogie not. I mean, I really don't think Boogie's going to be ready. He's going to miss the first 2 to 3 months. So Yeah, I don't know, Dan. What do you think?
Well, I was kind of starting to get excited about Jordan Bell, and now I feel like this puts a little bit of a damper on things. I always find it hard to draft a guy that you know is not going to be the man for an entire season. Although, as it stands right now, he kind of has to play, right? There aren't any other options other than the Draymond Green at center lineup, which I know they like to use for decent stretches, but not the entire ball game. So he's probably still on the list. You just kind of have to realize that it's going to be a downward line for him. The beginning of the year is going to be his best opportunity. If you can move him, maybe you can find somebody who's not afraid of the Boogie thing. Now, there's a possibility that Boogie doesn't, what if he doesn't get better this year? What if he doesn't end up playing? That's a small percentage chance. So, there's something to it there. You just kind of, you take a flyer, you say, hope that this thing works out for 2 or 3 months, and that's not nothing. 2 or 3 months of productivity counts as something. So, yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm not like head down racing in to grab him wherever he might fall, but I like him. I think he's a solid grab, and especially if you had him in like a keeper league, I think you sit on him and see what happens. That to me is probably your best case scenario in that one. I am definitely downgrading all of my Warriors by at least a little bit, and it's not going to be massive. But at some point, let's assume Boogie actually gets on the floor. He is an intensely high usage basketball player. So to me, there's sort of no universe where Boogie's just out there collecting rebounds and putbacks. He'll force himself into the mix. It's just he's too good and too dominant and ball dominant a player to be a zero impact guy on the court for this Warriors team. So, if you have Klay Thompson, maybe he's the one guy you don't adjust in this whole thing, because Klay Thompson's the same dude every year. It's insane how consistent his numbers are season over season. We'll do a show someday called The Klay Thompson Show, where we just don't say anything for 25 straight minutes. I think you do have to put a little tick against Steph. Just assume that there's going to be a shot or two fewer. Same deal with Kevin Durant, and definitely with Draymond Green, because they'll have to move him down to power forward when Boogie's on the court. And Draymond, I've always thought his best numbers come when he's playing center. That's when he can grab the most rebounds. That's when he can stand closer to the rim. His defense becomes a bigger deal in that spot. So to me, he's the guy that probably takes the biggest hit. The question is when, and we just don't know. There's an expectation that he might get on the court by late January or February. Even him being on the court for a couple of minutes impacts the other guys. And if he ever gets to full strength this year, then it becomes a much larger tick against these dudes. So at the end of all this, Adrian, my thought is a guy like Anthony Davis is just getting himself solidified in that number one fantasy slot, because there's sort of nothing the Pelicans could do at this point that would diminish his role on that team. The only thing that could have happened would have been the return of Boogie Cousins, and now he's somewhere else. So, I know that there's the injury concern, but damn, I don't know how you don't take Anthony Davis 1 overall, because the guys behind him now are slowly falling farther back in my estimation.
Yeah, Dan, I agree. And, you and I have talked numerous times on this show about how we felt like Anthony Davis is the best player in fantasy, just numbers-wise, just statistic-wise, he's the best. Now with Boogie gone, as you mentioned, it just opens up more usage in that front court. He's going to be relied upon more. One of the reasons why I always faded away from Anthony Davis was because of his injury concern. Made it through a full year last season. So, that hesitation that I always had is kind of diminishing now, where I feel a lot safer taking him. I have no problem taking Anthony Davis anywhere from 1 to 5. I think he's a lock. 1 to 3, the top 2 picks, he's got to be right there. So
he's number one.
No problem with that.
Yeah, he's number 1 for me, hands down. If I have the first overall pick, I'm taking him. It's a situation where I would consider trying to trade up from the 4th or 5th pick to try to get Anthony Davis now. And maybe I'm overreacting a bit here quickly after all this news is broken. But, everybody out there knows that I don't believe that Giannis is a guy that's going to add the three-pointer or completely fix his free throw shooting, which is what he'd have to do to get to that tier. And Karl Anthony Towns, there's a missed game coming at some point in his NBA career. I don't know when, but he can't. You can't play 82 games every single season and not end up getting dinged up a little bit. I love Cat. He's your steady state first round guy that just he's so durable that he pushed himself. He was the number 2 guy by totals this year, despite being, I think he was number 5 by average. And playing 82 games goes a long way. LeBron was another guy who was able to work his way up the ladder because he played all 82 regular season games. I think LeBron takes a little step back this season, not because necessarily he's getting older, but just because there's sort of a cap on what they need him to do. There's no need to make a run to the finals this year. You don't have to go completely insane. This is kind of a 2-year plan for the Lakers, and we'll talk about that, by the way, momentarily. James Harden, I think maybe he slides into that number 2 slot for me now, depending on whether you think he's going to play 75 games or more. I think that spot has now become a pretty big question mark where Steph Curry was probably my guy if you thought he was going to stay healthy, but now there's the Boogie thing, and KD basically always misses 10 games a season these days. So to me, your number 2 pick is probably somewhere in the Harden, Towns, Giannis. Maybe you still consider Curry since his game is less impacted by the addition of a center, but I do think that him taking fewer shots is going to be a knock against him. It moves Anthony Davis so far out in front. This is a guy, by the way, in AD that was already like 30% more important than the number 2 player in fantasy basketball. And now he's going to be alone, not alone, but no other large superstar on his team. Where would Anthony Davis have been this season if Boogie didn't play there at all this most recent year? I mean, the numbers would have been out of this world. I am currently in the bucket, and I'll probably rethink my position and come up with something a little less insane. But I love the fact that people are still afraid of Anthony Davis. That makes it feel like I could probably get him without having to mortgage the farm. And he's my number 1 guy, and I don't know who my number 2 guy is right now. It's probably Karl Anthony Towns.
So nobody was as more scared than I was on Anthony Davis, Dan. I am the most aggressive person when it comes to avoiding, and I'm jumping on board. So that whole thing about, I think you might see the majority of the fantasy world getting ready to jump on board the Anthony Davis hype train. But as far as the number 2 spot, I still like Karl Anthony Towns. That guy is Bruce Willis from Unbreakable. And you know what? Tibbs loves his starters so much that I feel like even if even if Karl Anthony Towns had a sprained ankle, Tibbs would still hey, go play.
Yeah,
so,
get out there.
He's just that crazy. But no, I agree. I think James Harden's got to be that number 2 guy after Anthony Davis. I agree with you that all these Warriors are going to be kind of taking a small knock in value. And one thing that I wanted to add on the Warriors is we saw them rest a lot of guys this year. And I think the addition of Boogie Cousins will only add to their ability to sit guys or to play guys less minutes. They're always thinking of the big picture now. They don't care as much about having the best record for the regular season. They're only thinking about that title. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I drafted Draymond Green in a lot of leagues this year, and it was kind of aggravating to see him miss games that I know that he wasn't really hurt, that he just maybe wasn't feeling 100%, so they would just sit him because why not sit him?
Freaking on, man. And especially now with them going to the finals year after year after year with these ridiculously long seasons, they're going to want to rest guys more every subsequent year. The deeper they go into the playoffs every season, the more these guys are going to want regular season rest. So yes, that's a really good point. Even if they're healthy, you're going to see the Warriors guys taking 4 to 5 games off, I think, which, 2 years ago it was rest him for two games, and then it was 3 games, then it's 4 games, and all of a sudden it's now, if you're not 100%, just sit your butt down. If we end up with a 5 seed in the West, whatever, we're gonna get Boogie back, so we'll be fine. Yeah, that's huge, man. That's like, I completely agree with you. Yeah, I think James Harden has a shot at number 2, although you could certainly make the rest argument on the Rockets side as well, although I do think that they prefer to have home court advantage in the playoffs, so maybe it's a little bit less of a thing than on the Warriors side. But man, geez, there's a big drop off from 1 to 2.
For you,
yeah,
Dan, I got a question. So we're talking about the top guys that we're considering for fantasy. Why do you hate Giannis Antetokounmpo? I'm just joking, Dan.
I hate you.
I just know.
I hate all of you.
Not high on him. And why do you hate this guy so much, Dan?
I just, man, do I? I don't. I love Giannis, man. He's probably the best player in the Eastern Conference now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think him. I think Joel Embiid. We're going to be talking about. I like Kyrie Irving as a top guy in the Eastern Conference. I think if Kyrie's healthy, he's going to have an MVP type season. But no, I'm just kidding with you, Dan.
Yeah, I know. My beef with Giannis was that I didn't think his defensive stats were sustainable with the position he was playing on the court and the number of minutes he was racking up, and just the fact that he was going to have more teammates around him the following year. And I didn't see him adding the 3-pointer or fixing his free throw game. You can't be a top 3 guy if you have 2 statistical categories where you are sub-average. And for Giannis, 3-pointers and free throw shooting, he was significantly sub-average. That's a big deal. That doesn't mean that I hate Giannis. I just don't think he'll be a top 3 guy so long as he has 2 holes in his fantasy game. You can get away with having 1, right? Steph Curry doesn't block any shots, and Anthony Davis doesn't really take the 3-pointer, well, Kevin Durant doesn't have any holes in his game, and James Harden turns the ball over too many times. Everybody has 1 hole in their game that's up at the top there, except KD and maybe Towns. Giannis is the first guy who has 2 holes. That's when you get to that next tier. Damian Lillard, behind him this last year, has had 2 holes in his fantasy game. He didn't block shots, didn't really rebound, also didn't shoot the ball particularly well. Chris Paul, you could argue 1 hole, but was also dinged up a lot. I mean, you can get to that point with 2 holes where Giannis is at, but getting any higher than that is damn near impossible. So I'd be thrilled if you proved me wrong. If Giannis came out next year and shot 82% at the foul line, he would just immediately move into the top 3 or 4. It's that simple for him. Or if suddenly he can continue to shoot 53% from the field and he makes 1.5 3-pointers per game, he'll just leapfrog LeBron and Kat, and he'll get up there with Harden and Durant, Steph, and in that second tier behind Anthony Davis. But one of those 2 categories has to get fixed. That's the bottom line. It's as simple as that. One of those 2 categories has to get fixed. I don't hate him, but he is locked into the 5 slot or later for me, because he has 2 holes in his fantasy game. And I don't think he's ever going to have another year where he averages like 2 steals and 2 blocks. It's too hard. Anthony Davis can do it, and the other guys can't do it. He's in a class of his own, and AD is a center, which means he can just lurk near the rim, and Giannis can't do that all the time. Hey, by the way, the Bucks, what do you think about Ersan Ilyasova? I think he might actually creep into fantasy value next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a great fit on that team because how he can space the floor, he can hit an outside shot. I think that's a really good pickup for them.
Man, I have so many things I want to talk about. I think I like Ersan also. That team's is a brutal rebounding team. The Bucks were one of the worst in the entire NBA, and Ilyasova is actually a decent rebounder, despite not being the world's biggest guy. He's also a good position defender, always leading the league in charges drawn, which the Bucks desperately need. Someone to actually be standing in the right place at the right time, instead of everyone just chasing the basketball like a bunch of 4th graders. It's absurd, their lack of defensive focus. And Ilyasova, obviously not a high flyer. He's not going to block any shots. But he's going to be in the right place at the right time, and even just kind of redirecting offensive players can be a big deal when trying to guard some people. So I like him. I would actually consider taking Ilyasova pretty late in drafts just to see how this whole thing shakes out. We got to talk about the Lakers, though, don't we? I mean, we're SoCal guys. We've been kind of beating around the bush. Oh, by the way, I just saw somebody put out a list of the free agents still available. Let me just rattle these off, and then we'll talk Lakers. Isaiah Thomas, Clint Capella, maybe Dwight Howard if he's bought out, Marcus Smart, Zach LaVine, Jabari Parker, Slow-Mo, Shelvin Mack, Archie Goodwin, why is he on that list? And C.J. Watson are still out there. So we'll see where those guys end up. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 10 guys basically left floating around right now. And obviously Clint Capella is the one that the Rockets can match whatever offer he gets, but someone could put Houston way into the luxury tax depending on what kind of deal he gets offered up. Okay, Lakers. It's pretty weird, Adrian, to be a Laker fan who feels slightly disappointed the day after the team signs LeBron James. But a lot of us felt that way yesterday, no?
Dan, it has been an emotional roller coaster to go to the ultimate high on getting LeBron to kind of dipping down on the signing of JaVale McGee and Lance Rondo. Dan, this is the best analogy I could come up with. I thought about this morning. I feel like, have you ever had like a sandwich or a salad with the craziest ingredients? Like, you're throwing in stuff that shouldn't go together, but somehow the salad still tastes good and it works. I'm hoping that this Laker team, it works, and that this whole experiment or project works out. It's getting so crazy now that it just might work, Dan. I don't know. What do you think?
Nope. Nope. You're way too optimistic on this one, and I love you for it. But this is a train wreck. This is a team that, I keep trying to convince myself the same thing. Like, where if you stare at something, I'm looking at a magic eye. I'm looking at a magic eye picture over here. That's the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm like, you know what? If I stare hard enough, I can see a spaceship. You have to have shooting around LeBron. He has, by the way, to LeBron's credit, he's actually gotten a lot better at shooting the basketball. He was excellent in the postseason before he busted up his hand on the blackboard. But you have to have somebody that can shoot around him. I saw your tweet, by the way, Adrian. He is at Adrian Benjamins on Twitter if you want to give him a follow. I am at Dan Besbris. I saw your tweet, screw the modern NBA, all layups, which is true. The Lakers are going to be awesome at layups. Let me clarify a couple of things. Number one, I'm actually not that upset about the Rajon Rondo signing. That was the one that threw a lot of Laker fans into a state of complete disarray. It was just sort of it was a letdown because the news broke that they had renounced Julius Randle. And so everybody thought, oh man, something's about to happen. It's going down. And then Lakers signed Rajon Rondo to a 1-year deal. And everybody went, what the... Because the odds of the Lakers winning the championship jumped to number 1 in the NBA right after that Randle news broke. That was everyone thinking Kawhi was on his way to Los Angeles, and it wasn't Kawhi, it was freaking Rondo. But if everybody didn't think that Kawhi was on his way in that moment, the Rondo signing actually isn't that terrible. He has been a much better teammate the last couple of seasons. He was actually really good with the Pelicans this last year. It was something that I had mentioned prior to the season starting, where everybody was like, this is the worst thing on earth. And I said, you know what? If he just handles the basketball and lets Drew Holiday play off ball, this could actually work for the Pels. And it did. I surprised myself by being right on that one. I thought there was a chance, but I watched a lot of Pelicans games the previous year where Holiday was forced to play point guard most of the season, and it was a disaster. He really needed to get away from that spot. His assist-to-turnover ratio was atrocious, and so I thought, you know what, if you get Holiday out on the move a little bit more, don't make him orchestrate the offense. Don't make him make the clever passes to start an offensive set. Things could actually work out, and it did. So if you get the same sort of disciplined Rondo, I don't know if that's going to be the case because, this is a weird Lakers roster. But if he's disciplined, if he's just playing sort of like a calm point guard that can actually spot up in the corner, and hey, everybody, Rondo was like a 36% three-point shooter last year. He actually wasn't that terrible from downtown. He's probably now going to be one of the best on the Lakers. Which says a lot about the other guys on the team. The Lance Stevenson signing is the one that actually annoys me. When it happened, I thought this is hilarious. The Lakers are spending $4 million to have somebody for LeBron to scrimmage against. But then when all these other things, when the McGee signing happened and then Rondo, and I thought, oh my God, this is all of the Lakers cap space being used up. I really want that Lance money back. So the Lakers have, $10 million now to spend instead of 3 or 4. Go bring back Brook Lopez or something like. Bring back someone that can space the floor a tiny bit. There's no money left. All I can think is that they're expecting dudes to get bought out at some point this year, and they'll bring in shooters at that point, like Philly did this last season. They were able to bring in Bellinelli and Ilyasova. I don't know who that guy is that's going to get bought out that the Lakers might look for. Melo, by the way, is not the answer to that question. But yeah, as things currently stand, this team's going to be a total log jam, and I don't know how I don't know how the pieces are going to fit together. It doesn't look pretty to me. But LeBron did now get his other guys that can handle the basketball, so at least there's that.
Dan, whether you love or you hate this Laker team, they're going to be exciting to watch. It's going to be must-see TV. Every time they're on the court. And I know this is probably the homer, the Laker fan in me. I'm kind of excited to see what can happen with this team. I mean, Dan, LeBron brings out the best in his players. You've got Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Lonzo Ball. And, you had mentioned Rajon Rondo in the right setting with the right mindset. I think Rondo and Lance Stevenson can be solid additions. Dan, I'm really excited. Don't get me wrong. I don't think this team is anywhere near on the level of the Warriors and the Rockets. They're not going to be able to compete with those teams, but I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Dan.
Oh, yeah, you might be right about that. I'm sure the networks, ESPN and TNT, are probably booking the Lakers for every single Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday game this year. And NBA TV's going to probably have them on every Monday. So why do I even need Spectrum Sportsnet over here? I can just watch the Lakers on national every single night. It's going to be weird. LeVar Ball, you're going to get maximum LeVar Ball right now because Rajon Rondo was brought in to compete for the starting point guard job with frickin' Lonzo. I have no idea how this doesn't end in some sort of hellfire, but honestly, it doesn't matter, and that's the beauty part of it for a Laker fan. It's going to be hugely entertaining, like you said, but it doesn't matter because you can almost rest assured that LeBron and Magic got on the phone, and Magic was like, look, here's our choice. LeBron, I'm going to let you make the call on this. Do you want us to go mortgage the farm and bring in Kawhi? And we're not going to have a ton of pieces around you guys, but you're going to be 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA on the same team, and that's pretty tight. Or do you mind just kicking the rock down the road a little, kick the can down the road for 1 year? LeBron will use this season as a year for you to kind of rest up a little bit. I don't need you playing 115 games. Go light. Let's make the playoffs. Let's give the Laker fans something to get a little bit excited about because you're the king and you're freaking exciting. And next year, you call your boy Kawhi, you tell him, don't you do something stupid like re-upping with the Spurs. You come to L.A., we'll give you whatever max we can give you, and we'll have Lonzo and Hart and Kuz and Ingram. And when the 2 of you guys get together, Bron, you and Kawhi are on the same team, the Boogies will sign for $5 million, and the Brolos will sign for $5 million, and we'll be able to get anybody we want in the league for the veterans minimum or the mid-level or something in that window. And LeBron was probably said, you know what, Magic, I'm tired, man. It's like the end of The Fugitive. Do you remember the scene at the end of The Fugitive when Tommy Lee Jones is like, I know you didn't kill your wife, Richard Kimball, and I'm glad I'm tired. He says I'm tired. He's tired of chasing him. I didn't kill my wife. And I think that's what happened on this phone call. I think LeBron, Tommy Lee Jones, Magic was like, Magic, I'm tired, man. Just give me a year to coast. Let me coast for a year. And Magic's like, all right, cool, dude. We're gonna make a push for this thing in 2019, and that's where it sits. And then LeBron was like, and I'm sure Magic called him back like 8 minutes later and was like, okay, so I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is you can coast this coming year. The bad news is you're going to be playing with one of the two Lance Stevensons. I don't know if it's Lance or Lantz. You're going to be playing. You're going to be playing with JaVale McGee. You're going to be playing with Rajon Rondo. Anybody else you guys want me to bring onto this team? And LeBron was like, "That's hilarious. I'm going to Europe." So that's where we sit right now, right? So the Lakers are kicking the can down the road. The Rockets and the Warriors are going to be jockeying to see who's going to play probably the Celtics in the finals. And as fantasy enthusiasts, the playoffs don't matter. Thank goodness, because the regular season's going to be fun as hell. Final thoughts, Adrian, before we wrap this thing up.
So all the buzz, the word that we heard is that LeBron, as you mentioned, he's down for the long play, signing that 4-year contract, which he never did with the Cavs. So LeBron's on board with this long play here. Don't do anything drastic. It's not worth it. From what we hear, the Lakers are in heavy contact with LeBron. LeBron's approving of all these moves. So let's do this, Dan. If this was going to be a lost year anyways, let's make it must-see TV, and that's what they're doing. Let's give the Laker fans some fun and excitement. That's what they're doing. Let's just make the best of this year. Let's have a good time.
All right, well, there's your Lakers stuff, guys. You knew we were going to have to get into it. We're two SoCal dudes. I hope that was entertaining for you. And from a fantasy perspective, we will get into that later on. That is not coming on today's show. This is your Tuesday edition of Fantasy NBA Today. He's Adrian Benjamins. I am Dan Besbris. Back tomorrow, Neil Rochlani and myself will talk more free agency. Thursday, I'll be going solo, and then Adrian, you and Neil will wrap up the week on Friday. Have a wonderful Tuesday, everybody. Let's see who else gets signed today, and if anything else as crazy as Lance, Rondo, and JaVale happens. Hint, by the way, it won't. That's the craziest. Have a great day, everyone. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.